Besides listening to metal, one thing that metal fans love to do is make niche little subgenres for it. And one that's always perplexed me because it's not necessarily a legit genre. If anything, it's more of a fan-made genre, that being war metal. Or to some people, it's considered bestial black metal. When it comes to the overall components that make up war metal, it's basically a melting pot of all of the extreme metal genres you're used to hearing, such as black metal, death metal, and thrash metal. And to an extent, elements of grindcore can be involved, although it's not something that's necessary when creating war metal. For those who know what war metal is, it's pretty cliche, some of the names I'll be talking about later on in this video in terms of what were the pioneers and innovators for it. But what I always find interesting when the discussion's brought up about this style of music are what are considered to be the harbingers and prototypes for war metal. As for what I would consider to be a harbinger, I feel like you would have to look at the German thrash scene that was happening in the mid-80s. More particularly the two releases by Sodom, that being their EP, and The Sign of Evil, and Kreator's debut full-length album, Endless Pain. And I'm not saying that these are war metal releases at all, but what they did for their time for 1985, it really got the ball rolling for pushing the boundaries for extreme metal. Sodom having elements of first wave black metal and blending it with speed metal together. And Kreator, although they've always been a thrash metal band, had the same vibe and characteristics of what you would find in early stages of first wave black metal, that the characteristics are very similar to that of what you would hear in the attitude of war metal. But the standout feature about these two releases as to why I would characterize it as a harbinger for war metal is that both of them just sound so aggressive and militant. A few years after the release of both of these albums, you would notice that there would be a big boom in the Brazilian thrash metal scene, that a lot of people characterize what happened in Brazil around the late 80s as proto-war metal. Such noticeable releases would be Holocausto's Extermination Camp, Sarcophago's INRI, Sepultura's Morbid Visions, and Volcano's Bloody Vengeance. Not only are all of these releases primitive and extremely savage, but they were all blending different forms of extreme metal together, such as either combinations of black metal and thrash metal together, or death metal and thrash metal together. With the end results of those albums, of course it leads to what most people know as to be the Godfathers, the pioneers, and the first true war metal band that everyone claims to be, that being Blasphemy, when they released their debut full-length album, Fallen Angel of Doom. An album that changed the game for what a lot of people consider to be extreme metal. Blending styles of black metal, death metal, and thrash metal together, very similar to what all the thrash metal bands were doing in Brazil. However, the big difference that a lot of people point out is that musically and sonically, this just sounds all the more heinous, barbaric, and over the top. Where all the Brazilian thrash bands were cranking the intensity up to 10, Blasphemy went the next level and cranked it to 11. And another band that's just as equally as important to the formation of war metal, that's another big pioneer, would be Beheirt. When you listen to their release, that being An Oath to Black Blood, it has the same structure similar to that of Blasphemy, if it's very savage and bestial sounding, how everything's played out. But what I've always enjoyed about Beheirt's work is the vocals. It has more of like this venomous shriek to it that makes it sound all the more evil. However, a huge reason that I personally feel as to why more people gravitate towards Blasphemy as the first true war metal band is shortly after the debut full-length album release by Beheirt, that being Drawing Down the Moon, this band disintegrated to a one-man project, all done by Marco Lejo, and he immediately changed the sound of Beheirt from war metal to dark ambient music. And he's still active today, releasing dark ambient albums for Beheirt. whereas Blasphemy never gave up or changed their sound the slightest. From there on out, decades after the releases by both Blasphemy and Beheirt, a whole new legion of war metal bands shortly followed, worshipping the altar of these two in terms of sound and style that both Blasphemy and Beheirt presented to the underground extreme metal scene. While this style of music never got any sense of commercial success, I feel like a few key components that led at least to its appeal and success in the underground extreme music scene is a few key factors. One being the fact that it's very esoteric-like in nature, that you really have to go out of your way to find war metal bands, giving off like this little niche type of sense to the fan base. Then, in terms of music, a lot of war metal bands sound nearly identical together. They all have that very aggressive and Bastille-like attitude. And while that may come off sounding redundant and repetitive for other extreme metal fans, for the die-hard fan base for war metal, they look at it as you have reliability and consistency that will never ever change or be altered, thus making it feel as if there's this endless horde of war metal bands to enjoy. And the third and honestly most important detail that I personally feel like led to the, again, underground success for war metal is the presentation and looks for it is very striking and powerful. And for those who are going to say to me that they don't care about the look or an image of a band, that's just a gimmick, they only care about the music and that's it. Let's be honest with ourselves. In metal, your image and overall look is very important. Just take, for example, what the punk rock MBA said. Even though him and I really don't agree on much, for example, I don't think a 35-year-old should date a 17-year-old, and for some reason he's totally fine with that. The one big thing that I agree with him on, and it is very true, is that when you're trying to get your name out there and appeal to a certain crowd, in metal, your image is very powerful, and in war metal, that's something that you're going to notice very quickly when you get into it. Whether it be its album artwork with its very simplistic color selection of black, white, and red that's very striking and eye-catching, to the iconic face paint and jet black sunglasses that bands wear during band photo shoots, to even their overall stage attire of chains, spikes, and bullet belts that even some bands like Caveman Cult end up wearing full-on ghillie suits during live performances. It's just all really easy to recognize for the fan base, and in return, war metal has developed a very passionate following. And if there is one release that solidifies that formula to near perfection, it would be none other than Conqueror with the debut full-length album, War, Cult, Supremacy. It's a collaborative effort by both Ryan Forrester, the guitarist for Blasphemy, and James Reed, who's another important figure in the realms of war metal. And though musically and stylistically, it's nothing that you haven't necessarily heard before if you're familiar with war metal, again, it's very over-the-top aggressive, very barbaric and Bastille sounding from beginning to end. It laid out the blueprints for what the next band was going to be, carried over again by James Reed and Vermin, a new included member, which this is the formation now of Revenge. I don't care who you are. You can be a die-hard fan or a moderate fan. Hell, you might not even enjoy this band at all and you can't stand them for what they are. No matter who you are, I feel like everyone can agree on the fact that when it comes to presentation, image, and sound of Revenge, it all looks and sounds exactly the same. They've never changed a single thing about them. All of their album artwork is black and white. All of it's very simplistic and very, just bold looking. Their sound has always been insanely over the top, barbaric. Obviously blending styles of black metal, death metal, thrash, and even to an extent grindcore when it gets really hectic and chaotic. And all of that simplicity with this very straight to the point approach that they have done is a huge reason as to why they have so much success in war metal and have such a diehard fan base. No matter what it may be, no matter what time period, I can bet my life on it that as long as Revenge is active and they are releasing music, everything that they have done in the past, they're going to just keep doing until their hearts stop beating, basically. And this all ties into what I said earlier when it comes to the niche little success that war metal has. No matter what trends, ideas, or twists and turns that come and go in the realms of extreme metal, no matter what, war metal is always going to stay rooted in its humble beginnings of just very straightforward, ultra barbaric, and super aggressive metal, no matter what. And because of that, that's why it has such a dedicated and diehard fan base. However, one thing I've noticed over the past handful of years is that even though war metal is still very tried and true to its overall sound, one thing I've noticed that's kind of pushing the boundaries for war metal to the next level, believe it or not, is I'm noticing a lot of war metal bands are blending what we know as war metal, of again a mixture of black metal, death metal, thrash metal, and even elements of grindcore for the hell of it, like every extreme metal style of music that we know, and combining noise into the factor now. And that's specifically happening in an area I thought it would never happen in, and I can't find any reason as to why it's specifically this area. But in the Middle Eastern countries, most particularly India and Sri Lanka, there are war metal bands blending these styles of music together. One of those bands that is based out of India would be Tetragrammacide. And when they released their EP back in 2015 called Typhonian Wormholes, Indecipherable Anti-Structural Formula, which is such a mouthful to say, this really shocked me back then, because I never thought extreme metal could get this, I don't know, abrasive, harsh, and destructive. Like, to this day, my ears are still ringing over just the chaos that you're going to hear, that it really blurs the lines between power electronics and war metal, that I would argue this is one of the most intense releases you'll ever hear if you're just solely going for that just extreme over-the-top sound. This is like the apex of what you're looking for. Shortly after the release of that EP, more bands started popping up in India that again blend these styles of all different extreme metal genres and noise together, such as Kapala, Banish, and Jyotisavedanga. Then there's Konflict, and these guys are from Sri Lanka. And while they have all the components that you're used to hearing with this style of music, the real standout feature with them is that they blend elements of noise and death industrial together, that it's very cybergenetic in a way, that it's like as if you have, I don't know, genocide organ, like the very dense and ultra abrasive sounds of this project, but you mix it with the ultra violent bestial aggression of war metal, and this shit will just annihilate your senses unrelentingly. It is just such ungodly aggression that just has like such a take no prisoners type of attitude. In conclusion with this video, I'm aware that I didn't name every single war metal band. Trust me, I'm aware that there's a bunch other out there that are very big and successful, again, in the realms of war metal. But I feel like if you're a fan of this style of music, you already know it. Because it seems like when it in war metal, no one ever just dips their feet in it. It's either you go full force into it and you just immediately know everything about it, or you're just completely unaware of its existence. And I feel like for anyone who's watching this who has no idea what this is, or you don't even consider it a legit style of music, all you need to know are these names, and immediately you're going to be hit with just an acidine amount of bands out there, because the hordes and hordes and hordes of war metal bands grow every single year, and there will never ever be a shortage of war metal bands. So again, I know this is pretty on the nose here that everyone should already figured out by now, but if you want just a reliable scene that has nothing short of just ultra aggressive, militant, and bestial sounding metal, check out everything that you can in war metal. And that'll do it for this video, guys. Like always, everything I talked about will be linked below in the description, and yeah, that'll do it. So like always, guys, make sure you guys drink plenty of water to stay hydrated, and have a great day.